course is the fact that, okay, it
All right, thank you.
feels
This
like
meeting is
something.
being recorded. You were saying, sorry, Simi. I wanted to
Thanks
record
for
it
the
for Sharon.
interruption.
Sorry.
Okay, I will now change what I was going to say.
No.
That it feels it feels very much like doing something for myself, and I like the notion of investing in myself. But it concurrently does not feel like I feel like I'm getting paid, or I'm paying to have a judgment-free space in which to experiment, with different ways of becoming unstuck. And it's been the most effective thing for me in this season. I have gone to different tools in the past and, figured out ways out of, the stuckness. But this was the longest, most sustained period of stuckness for me. And yeah, and so it's working, however you would describe this course. I'd say it's working for me. I don't know if that's just based on where I'm at and what my needs were at this time, but there's definitely, I think there's space for this type of thing.
I think there's a fine line between like encouragement and accountability and pressure, as you were describing it.
Yes.
And I think this course does a really good job of staying over here. Also, I don't know if you caught it, but I started laughing when you're like, other systems encourage unhealthy perfectionism. Yes. I just was having a conversation with one of my students yesterday about how not getting an A is not utter failure. Like, right? There's that pressure in formal schooling to, and I felt it too. I mean, I was a seeker student myself, right? And that system, I think, is much less effective than it could be, precisely because of that emphasis on meeting sort of arbitrary goalposts perfectly. You have to meet them perfectly.
It's really interesting. And then we extend that to like ourselves in some kind of a way. So then we don't have good rubrics.
Mm-hmm.
Good ways of understanding that. Well, it's really encouraging to hear both of those things. Because I do believe, I mean, the one point, Simi, like really giving yourself the time to really invest in yourself, and that move where you're like, no, I'm actually going to put some of my energy that we're so likely to put into all these other things into myself and growing, into feeling into my own, where I need to grow. I feel like that's like a key part of the whole writing a good life, the idea that we're kind of investing in writing our story and we're finding our place in it, and that's something that we're doing. And then to have a judgment-free zone to experiment with getting unstuck, where you have the supportive people to like kind of catch you in like interesting ways. That's one of the ways I'm trying to think about making this course better, is to give more opportunity for people to share and reflect and kind of give feedback, which is kind of the focus of the second to last week, where we're really like, okay, how do we take what we're doing, maybe deepen the connections and like expand and keep on going. So it's like, my vision I had of thinking about like alternate higher education is like giving people the tools to continue their own education. So it's like, I've said this before, it's like, you get one wish from the genie, and it's like the smart wish is to wish for more wishes, right? And that in the form of like a course, if you get one course that can like help you, if I'm like trying to be the course that helps you like move into all these other things, it's like learning how to learn in that regard, like feeling safer to take those experiments, to move forward and to be okay, like you said, Sharon, like being okay with failure in a way where you can actually like be imperfect and then see that as okay, and actually like just that's what it is, and then we can move on from that. I feel like it's really liberating.
I was trying to get my students to understand that if you're doing something perfectly, you're not learning anything. Like it's a thing you already knew, right? Because you wouldn't expect you wouldn't get on a bicycle for the first time and expect to nail it. You wouldn't bake a souffle for the first time and expect to nail it. You wouldn't write a 300 level paper for the first time in the case of my CSU class and expect to nail it the first time. And I don't understand how to help them see that in a way that's productive and reassuring, because I think a lot of those students just hear that and go, yeah, but how do I get an A? Right.
I'm one of those, I'm not even gonna lie. Like
I
the
am too.
joy is in the A. The joy is in hacking whatever the heck system the professor has going so I can get the A. No, I hear you on that. Like
That's a really tough.
Yeah,
Sorry,
it
go
is.
ahead.
No, I haven't heard your voice today. I was just gonna say, Daniel, you always have the look of someone who's on the verge of a brilliant thought.
Just on the verge, not actually the
I know.
brilliant thought.
That doesn't
Yes.
sound right? No, the brilliant thought is well, it's in there. It's just about to come out. So please go ahead. I'd love to hear.
Sorry for interrupting. No, my mind does go a lot of different places, like with just what you shared, but I usually prefer to listen, or I try to listen a lot more. Like I think it helps. A lot of times people feel better by just having someone listen than just giving advice. Like giving advice is hard. It's something that's very personal, right? Like, I don't know, but like from all these conversations, like it made me think about like where you started, Sean, and how this can be pressure. Like it made me think, do you all know the concept of anti-fragility or anti-fragile systems, and how like they're systems that get better as you stress them a little bit, as they go through stress, just like muscles, or just like there's some examples with economy that I cannot remember, like investments versus spending on versus, but yeah, like it made me think a lot about that, but also how, like, I don't know, from Sean's point of view, or how in my project when I'm like the educator or like mental, like how much can you push your students towards that pressure, towards that challenge and that struggle? How much does it need to come from you, or how much do they need to find it themselves to kind of create that positive? Yeah, sorry. And what else? What was it? There was something else. Oh, the other thing where you were talking, like I just recently heard, like, do you know, like, teach a man how to fish? No, catch a fish for a man and he'll live for a day. Teach a man how to fish, he'll live for his whole life. And then a few weeks ago, I heard someone telling, like, what if you taught the man how to invent fishing? And it was like yeah, like then it expands on possibilities, right? And it goes into creativity and innovation and being your own teacher of sorts. So yeah, there were a lot of those thoughts in the middle, but now that I'm put on the spot, I don't remember all of them.
I'd say
Yes.
That's more than the verge of a great share. That was.
I think you got it.
I think that's a really good point to kind of transition to hear what you all think about the sense of creativity and innovation and being your own teacher, and how to be in the position of being your own teacher. I think the dangers with that, does that seem, I mean, one, I completely agree. Like, we have to be our own teacher. But I also think, I wonder if there's some dangers in being our own, in being our own teacher. If I'm like on this journey between me and I'm my own teacher, is that limiting too?
I have another thought. I don't think it's being your own teacher, but it's more learning to be a proper student. I think that's way more, that has a lot more into it, right?
Well, it's like if the best teachers are learners, I would say,
exactly.
Right?
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, if you're really going to be a good teacher of your own experience and of yourself, you have to put yourself in a position to be continually learning.
Right.
Yeah, and I don't know that there's a huge distinction between them, because I don't think, like, a lot of students come into classes in, formal system expecting to be lectured at and expecting to be told what and how to do. And there's so much evidence that that is not effective, right? They're just sitting and listening to somebody and being told, like given the directions to walk through the steps is not an effective way to learn. I have this talk with my students regularly about my job being to give them a framework, to prompt them to think and to help nudge that thinking in the right direction, if we're goal oriented, which isn't always the case. Right. So like that question about like, is it dangerous to be our own teacher? But like, I don't think that there is any distinction between those two things. Like you have to learn how to guide yourself. You have to learn how to prompt yourself. You have to learn how to build your own frameworks and set your own goals. And I mean, if that's not a summation of adult life, I don't know what is, right? Like you gotta figure all that out. And that's, I mean, once you learn how to do that, then you can learn anything if you decide to.
If you're interested in it and enthusiastic about it.
Yeah.
Which it helps to be playful.
Yes.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. A few things are coming to mind. One is, just the way, we're framing this as, facilitating your own learning, right? And so I've been in a few different contexts as far as education systems are concerned. I grew up in Nigeria. My, elementary, middle, high school was in Nigeria. I taught in the US, I taught in China, I live in Canada. Eventually went back and worked within the education system in Nigeria. Nigeria's education system is a pile of crap. Sorry. And but Nigerians are some of the most enterprising. So I had the opportunity to work with college students and like post-secondary age, and some high school students as well. And I was amazed by how brilliant some of these kids are. So you have the story of the average Nigerian who leaves the Nigerian education system and travels abroad is they end up at the top of their class when they travel. So in high school, my teachers told me science was not my thing. I should find another path. I went to college and I was a straight A student. I was that student, Sharon, who would have to convince. And so I'm just trying to think and the reason the education system's so messed up, or one maybe testament to the brokenness of the system, is the fact that it's incredibly structured. I found the classroom in the United States to be very liberating. And it's so funny to hear you describe it this way, because literally I would go to class, we would listen, the teacher would write on the board, read out of a textbook, we would write down and memorize. You better memorize, right? If you intend to pass. And so that was the norm. Now I've seen studies recently around, rote learning and some, that it's not all bad and that there's some benefits to it. But I'm trying to think what then makes someone who's grown up in that environment as sharp and smart as they are. Well, there are other unstructured spaces in which they've had to figure it out how to navigate life. So classroom may be structured, right? But the classroom of life is there's no power. I have to figure out how to get my homework done before the lights go out. There's no water. We have to figure out how we'll get water into the house and still get where we need. So I think the critical ingredient for learning is the opportunity to explore unstructured spaces. What comes to mind right now is like people who grow up in rural parts of the country, for example, where they don't even have classrooms, but they develop other intelligences, they develop other competencies that you may not find in someone who's had access to other things. So I think creativity, I mean, you go out into some of those villages, and I'm sure if you've traveled much in rural parts of the world, you've seen how creative they'll figure out how to create a windmill out of plastic bottles or something, or they'll create their own toys out of the elements. And so there's an innate capacity to create, there's an innate capacity to function. And I think, to be honest with you, I always say everyone is creative. Everyone is a creator and has potential to be creative. It's when we put those limits around So yeah, I would almost say throw a child in a playpen or throw a child in a sandbox, and you'll see them do far more than you would if you sit them at a desk, and put a pen in their hand. So yeah.
Can I just pull out that so like not just creativity and exploration, but there was sort of a thread of problem solving in there. And I totally agree that like learning how to problem solve is a lot of how you develop that, critical thinking and adaptability.
Innovation. Yeah. Good call.
That's one of the things I really like about Burnett and Evans' work and design thinking mindsets is that not just problem solving, but problem finding, or like really actually seeing if we're asking the right questions in this big unstructured space. So if we're in this advanced learning environment and we're kind of taking our learning to the next level, whatever that's going to be, and we're each in this kind of unstructured wild space in the classroom of life where there's not really clear answers, our ability to kind of ask the questions that are going to help us solve the problems, like to find the better problems to solve, as it were. And we might be thinking we're solving this problem, but to really expand and ask those bigger questions, I think that's another reason why I was asking the question whether or not teaching ourselves is dangerous. Because I think if we're just teaching ourselves in the sense of like educating ourselves in isolation, we might just work on the wrong problem. Whereas I guess I still really am, the more I go through this, the more I really believe in the value of seeing things from other perspectives or hearing other people's perspectives. Like Simi, when you were talking, like that made me think so much about where I am in a way that I couldn't have done without you offering your perspective. And I kind of want to use this idea on how to facilitate our own learning. And that this is really the goal of this entire course, is to really think about that, what this looks like to facilitate our own learning and how we can do that better. Does that question make okay. So thoughts on that big question, like how can we personally facilitate our own learning better?
I think you can do a lot alone, depending on how self-aware you are.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I can remember, are you all familiar with Ken Robinson? I guess so, right?
The Sir Ken Robinson, the teaching.
Sir Ken Robinson, yes.
Teaching our kids creativity.
Yeah. So in one of his books, he talks about like distilling education or teaching to its very essence, to its more basic form, and he arrives to, I can't remember if these are the exact words, but he says that it's basically the relationship between a teacher and a student. So at the most basic form of learning and educating is this relationship, right? Where it's not just you, like there can be learning like just for one or a super individual way. And I do believe that. I think you can learn a lot on your own, but at some point, like you said, like you get stuck on your own ways. And I don't know if this happens to you, but just verbalizing a lot of your thoughts, even if you love thinking on your own and you write down, like, when you verbalize them, they take different forms. And sometimes they even like crystallize and solidify in different ways. That as you're speaking, you're like, wait, like, yeah, that makes sense. And I hadn't thought about it like that, even if you've been thinking about something for like 2 or 3 weeks. So that relationship and that community, I do think it's in the essence, like just like Sir Ken Robinson says, like of teaching and learning. Like it's more than one thing.
So I re-listened to a Jim Collins. Jim Collins wrote Good to Great, which is a big on business. It's a big business book, Why Some Companies Take the Leap and Others Don't. It was a gift. He basically says his two, he's a wonderful and interesting person. And his 2 key values that he credits a good life with are relationships and curiosity. He puts them in the other order, actually. Curiosity and relationships are the 2 things that give us a quality life. he says that his mentor, that there's two different types of people. I usually, people fall into two buckets. People that see relationships as mainly transactional, where we're like basically getting what we want from other people and then seeing what we can give other people, but it's just transactional. And then ones that see relationships as a deepening and fundamental part of what it means to be human. So we're actually cultivating these deeper relationships in work, out of work, friendships. And I'm, revisiting Epicurus for another course I'm working on. And this idea that friendships are crucial. Friendships are like this key aspect of a good life, of what it means to actually live a good life. And I'm just really glad you said all of that, Daniel, because I do think there's not only the sense that verbalizing our own thoughts helps us crystallize them, helps us work through them in a way that it's hard to do on our own, even though like I write furiously in my notebook as if I'm talking to someone, since no one wants to hear me talk as much as I like to talk. But there's also the sense, and what I want to explore in the second to last week is our intentional design about doing this with other people and inviting people into this learning process that we're on, and asking, Burnett and Evans talk about a life design team, that actually people will love to talk to you about your big life decisions if you let them in, or people will love to talk with you about what you're learning if you let them in, and if it's something that they want to learn about as well. And that your friends, for you to be able to be like, hey, I got this idea, what do you think? If you can create a kind of culture where it's okay for them to kind of tell you what they think and what they see, where you benefit from that. So it's not just hearing, and we have to be really careful. Like, I don't want to say like, there's a sense, and this course is designed where there's like an inner, week 1 is kind of inner, and then week 2 is kind of outer, and week 3 is kind of inner, and week 4 is kind of outer, and week 5 connections is kind of inner, and week 6 is kind of outer. So I was really inspired by Keegan's spiral dynamics and his model of adult development into this, like, anyway. So we're in this phase of moving from the inner of like what connections give me strength to the outer of what kind of collaborations or contact can I have with the world that's going to strengthen my own process of living a good life, whatever that is. So it's kind of like from connections, like the connections we feel inside of us and the connections that we have with the past, with our ancestors, with the future version of ourselves, with the glorified state of shiny Simi or dazzling Daniel. Like those connections are kind of happening inside of us. There's kind of like a rooting or grounding in that. I wonder, and this is the part of the course that I think is the hardest to do in a week. So it's almost like I'm just planting the seed for this to continue on, rather than like, this week, we're going to establish collaborations with other people. It's like, well, no, collaborations don't work like that. Generally, good collaborations are the product of time and trust and friendship and curiosity and conversation, right? They unfold over time. But so the key word here in the second to last week is collaboration. The goal is to kind of think about how that plays into, and this is my sneaky way of asking how much learning can we do on our own, is another way of asking how much do we need to collaborate with others to do the learning that we have to do. And I'm going to imagine that this is going to be different for different people and different for different projects. If I'm a monk in the holy order of solitude extraordinaire, and I just go in the mountains and it's just between me and me, maybe I don't need collaboration. If I'm an entrepreneur or a writer, what I'm thinking about, I feel like I need it. I feel like I thrive on it. And so for me at this point in time as a learner, the question that I'm really engaging with is, what are the most fruitful ways to continue to collaborate and fuel that engine of collaboration? Who's doing work and what different ways can I do that? So that's kind of the question for upcoming in this week. There's really 2 questions, and I do want to give us some time to write on this. Any thoughts before Actually, if you have them, let's just put them on the page. So 2 questions. How much do I need collaborators? Actually, there's 2 sets of questions. And in what ways? How might I do that? And the other question is, next week is our 7th meeting, and we focus on death and reflection, and like look at impermanence, that everything is impermanent, and using that power of impermanence is really powerful, honestly. So how noticing that this is about to end, how are we going to make our time in this next week the most valuable? Maybe that means just totally resting and not doing anything. Maybe it means like going extra hard and like trying to achieve something, or creating a prototype, or doing something to set us up for a really rich reflection on where we've been. We might already feel like we're at a good place to offer a reflection of the course in a way that's going to help us move forward. But we might want to do something else before that. And so this is kind of like the last call on the learning course. You've got 1 week to grab your drinks and shimmy it out. So the second question is, anything you need to do this week? Maybe need is too strong. Anything you need or want to do this week to get the most out of the course and set you up to reflect well. The first one is kind of, and I'm gonna send you 2 sets of invitations to write, one focused on collaborating and one focused on reflecting, to just kind of get us in that mode that we're in this. We're nearing the end of this, of us making meaning of what happened the last 6 weeks, last 7 weeks. And I'm suggesting that the collaboration, working with other people on our good life, or helping other people live their version of the good life, and not even worrying about our good life, but actually like just helping them, may be the most challenging part to teach, but the most important, maybe. I don't know. Okay, let's go 10 minutes. It's been a fun half an hour. What do we think? Anything come up on either of those? How much do we need collaborators, and how might I collaborate more? Or anything we want to do this week to help us get the most out of this course before we reflect? Or none of the above?
This one is gonna need more time from me. Like, I feel like a lot came out that I'm gonna have to untangle like in the next few days. The collaboration part is huge, because I don't know, I started writing about how really the memories that I treasure the most are moments shared with other people.
Oh.
And just like suddenly everything like that started making a lot of sense. Like, I love spending time on my own, but really the memories that I treasure, or when I try to think of happy memories, it's time spent with other people, right? So it's weird, because I like since I was able to, I hate, and going back to session 1 where I said that I hate tags, but one of the tags that I feel close to me, like if I had to choose one, is being an introvert. And when I learned what that means, and so I was like, yes, I really enjoy more time alone than with other people. So I've been kind of covering with that tag sometimes. Yeah, but maybe to a point where it's not giving me anything more now than what I need. So yeah, that one was good. I like that. The next one is more about my project and how I like to think I've always been aware that I cannot do all of this on my own. Like I'm gonna need a team if I want to have the impact that I want to have. But then at the same time, I've been working on my project for, it's gonna be almost a year now on my own. And I'm always thinking like, oh, not yet. Like, yes, I'm gonna ask for help, but not yet. And really, I don't think when the right yet is gonna come. So I feel like I'm delaying that a little bit. And as I was writing, it came to me that there's a little bit of pride in there that I wanna show people like, hey, look, I built this all on my own. And it's usually like, that's not me. Usually, like, I don't care. Like, I'm fine with sharing success and but trying to put a positive light on that, I was thinking like it is, I don't know if I'm like trying to put this up as like forcing it, or it has a little bit of truth, but maybe it's because I really, really believe in this and I really care about this project, like nothing I had ever tried to do before, like sports or guitar or whatever. I was never trying to be the best, but this, my project, I really care about it. So this pride is rising up that I had never really felt. Yeah, just not to take too much longer. The other one was about like, I talked about helping others help themselves a few weeks ago. And it's hard because I don't want to go out to everyone and be like, hey, I want to help you. Because usually that's not how it works, right? Or we expect people to be like, hey, would you mind helping me with this? And obviously I would be like, yes, obviously. But I was thinking like, when I needed help, how hard it's been for me to ask for help. And a lot of times I haven't asked for help. And I've been, again, like too proud and trying to work things out on my own, even if they took longer. So this gave me also like that awareness of how, like thinking about others and how hard it is to ask for help. So try to be more mindful of finding a way to offer more help in a, I don't know what's the best adjective to put, not adjective, adverb, whatever. What best describes the way that I want to offer help, like not imposing it and not being like, hey, I know everything, like let me help you, but being like yeah, like I'm here for you, you know? So yeah.
So much relevant for me. And it wasn't.
Karen was like, yeah, let's talk about it.
It's amazing. I notice myself with I can't just go up to people and say like, I'm ready to help you.
Right.
Because obviously like I'm in that boat where I'm like, I have something amazing to help you. I can help you be the best version of yourself. People are like, not really, but
they're
like,
not.
no, I know they're not. You all are very kind, but you don't know how many people I had to talk to. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes.
There is something really interesting about presuming to help other people when you're offering a service. So I lit up with that and about listening. Also, I was trying to really formulate a project for week 6. I feel like this is one of the weakest. I'm thinking about collaborating and how nebulous that is and how many different forms it could take. I don't really have like a good week, a good outcome for the week, for this week. It's like the weakest week from a pedagogical standpoint, like where it's like, it's kind of nebulous, which is not good in education, right? You want people to have like a clear outcome, but then give them a lot of different ways. Anyway, I love, thanks for that. This is making my point about doubting my perspective. I just wonder, I feel like asking for help is such a great assignment. Like,
right.
I want you to ask for help this week. I'm thinking about like the 3 ways, and it connected with what I wrote, that I want to be able to get to a point by the end of this course, where I have a draft of the manuscript done that I started, because it's actually looking pretty good. And I'm excited I should finish it. But what if finishing it meant getting it to a point where I feel comfortable enough asking for help from 3 or 4 people? And so I'm not going to finish the manuscript. I'm going to finish the email that says, this is the shittiest draft of a manuscript you've ever seen. And I need an editor, and I need help. Would you be willing to help me with this? Totally different goal than I'm going to finish my manuscript. It's like, no, I'm going to look for some collaborators to help me write a better manuscript from the shitty draft that I'm going to give them. Totally different vibe for me. Which I think honestly is like probably a more accurate vibe on how to write a great book, right? Especially if I get it in the right people's hands that are able to give me a better feedback on how to make it better.
Yeah.
I guess I have to say another thing too. I feel like the other thing that came up for me, I asked the question, do I need collaborators? And the answer was like an overwhelming, like, yes, considering every student that you work with, every participant in a workshop is like a learning partner for what you want to do. Like, you all are we're collaborating right now, and me listening to like how this is helping you, so that I can like be clearer when I hear someone say, oh, I'm really looking for this. I could say, oh, well, then maybe I can help you. Or maybe this thing that I've co-made with my last, 3 courses can help you. I don't know. That was really rich. There's more I could say, but I'm gonna yield the mic.
Nice.
Clubhouse.
Yeah. I haven't been on Clubhouse for 5 days. It's like the longest stretch.
I saw your post on was it Instagram?
Yeah.
Yeah. We went out, and yeah, that's good. I'm impressed.
It's been really good. I miss it. I miss it, but it's been.
No, you don't. No, you don't. So 2 thoughts. One is yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it is connected actually. So I saw your email, by the way, Sharon, earlier in the week. Thanks for sharing that. I loved it. I really did. And I had a thought about it actually as we're speaking, how actually while I was reading the email, I was thinking to myself, what a gift it is to have someone in your life. And I don't mean you specifically, Sharon. I mean, I think for us as humans, right? It's a gift at any point in your life to have someone who, I'll use a cheesy line someone shared with me a little while ago, said someone who knows the song in your heart and sings it back to you when you've forgotten the words. So someone who's on the journey with you, right? And they may not be able to like get you to that next lily pad, but they can help you get unstuck, right? So whether it's giving you a comic book or giving you a paint book or whatever it is, right? And I mean, I think my short answer to the question is, I think we need people, like, and I think maybe some more than others. I'm an introvert in many ways, but I found over the last several years that in order to thrive, I need to have people. And I began even to curate a network of people around myself. And it really started when I found I was, over the space of like 6 to 7 years, I was living in a new city every year, or a new country. Oh. And initially, my thing was, at the time I had, my friend worked for an airline, and I had a buddy pass, and so I could travel. So I would try and always go back, right? I had to like go back to Dallas and attend all the birthdays and the weddings and holidays. And it occurred to me, wait, I'm doing all this work. I'm not invested in the new place I'm at. No one's coming to find me. I'm the one going back, because I felt I needed that feeling of being connected. And so I began to deliberately invest in the communities where I was, and that required me learning how to sort of just curate my space. That began my love for coffee shops and so on. So much so that in my last job, I realized I was burning out by the second year. And so, and I knew, I mean, I looked at I assessed my life, and I realized what was missing was time with other people. I had moved back to Nigeria for the first time in decade plus a few years, and all my connections, I mean, I didn't have any friends who were still in the country. And so I was going to work and going home. And so I asked my employer for a day off during the week, or a day that was a flex day. And I said, the only way I can stay on this job is if I have a day off during the week, and I use that day to cultivate community, because I need people. My family were not around. And so I began to be deliberate, would like invite random strangers out to coffee. And I would create life outside of my paid job. And so I realized I need people in order to thrive. And, I wrote down a few thoughts about the types of people. I think in every period of life, there are people who are sort of my core group. So they know, as best they can, the ins and outs of my life and where I'm at. Then there's my network of friends, usually people who inspire me or are inspired by me. And then there are the helpers. And I define helpers as collaborators who come into your life for a specific purpose. And this is me getting what maybe more nebulous, but I really think that that helpers are the hardest to identify, because they don't necessarily come with a signpost saying that's what they are. So in many ways, Sean, you were a helper, and not to creep you out, but let's keep any of you out. But I think I sense who my helpers are more than I sort of discover them. So I remember the very first time I was in a room or conversation on Clubhouse with you. I think it was during the education conference or something. And I knew then and there. I mean, I didn't know much about what you did. I don't even know if I'd heard you share it then. And this has happened, by the way. There are a few people in Clubhouse who, after, I just see their face and send them a message. I'm like, hey, I think we should connect, And so I've deliberately honed, because I think those are the hardest people to identify. I've tried to hone my senses to recognize who's in my life in this season, because I need them. I needed to get unstuck, and I found you. And I know you'll bring in, like serendipity and all of that. But I really believe that there's this saying in my local language that if you're sick, and this is, people in rural parts of the country, they'll say, if you're sick, look around you at what's growing, and it's very likely the very thing you need to get healed. And I have a whole story around that, yeah, I'll not go down that road. And I think it's the same for people, like and for resources. So if I'm experiencing this in my life right now, if I'm not attentive, if I'm inwardly focused, chances are I'll miss what's around me to solve that problem, right? And people are essential to that process. So anyway, Sean, in this season, you have been essential to that process. And by extension, this community. Yes. I don't know if we'll, hang out after the 7 weeks is over, Sharon and Daniel and Sean. But I know that in this season, you did something very specific for me, right? And that's monumental. That's maybe even more than people in my core group are doing right now. So yeah, so all that to say, my core group, my network of friends, and then my helpers who come in different shapes and sizes. It may be like the coffee person, or maybe that's not a good example. It could be like sometimes it's someone you overlook and you don't realize, and the way they help you may not be they give you something. It may be, that person who got me to realize that I'm too quick to say yes, and I need to learn to say no more. Maybe they betray me, and so I learn, that I should not be so trusting of people. So yeah, those are my thoughts around collaborations and what they might look like.
Have you learned to recognize when you're someone else's helper?
Ooh, that is such a good question. No, I have not. I
Yeah,
like
because you're
that,
helping
though. I
me a
have
ton
not.
right now to repay the favor.
Oh, good. Yay.
There's a really interesting thing. That's so interesting that you asked that question, Sharon.
Well, I was thinking it while
Sure.
you were talking to me, because I feel like this last week, so I don't know if you remember, but our last meeting, I was really stuck. I'd had kind of a bad week and I just sort of like stopped absorbing anything, and I'd stopped, having clear thoughts. And I don't know, I came out of our conversation and I decided that I was going to set myself the task of, I guess, asking for help. So I was a week ahead. I am an A+ student, Sean. I anticipated the assignment.
Wavelength. Teacher wavelength.
So yeah. So like two things have happened. I have all these house projects I'm doing, and I made time to just go get smoothies with a friend of mine I hadn't seen since before lockdown. And she's a really
you're
new
kind of
friend.
buzzing to me. I'm sorry. Are you getting Daniel and Simi? Are you?
Yeah, I thought it was
down
just
your
me.
audio or something? It's kind of just distracting me from what you're saying.
Just muted myself to see if it was that.
It's probably on my end because my internet's a little unstable, and I don't know that there's anything I can do about it. Did moving the mic help? Yeah, okay. So new friend, I'd only known her for like 6 months or so before lockdown, and it's really weird how I met her. It's a very long story. There's a lot of serendipity involved. It turns out that her aunt was one of my undergraduate mentors out in California, so 3 states away. Really weird. And I didn't know that when I met her. So like, we've sort of been cultivating this friendship, and both of us have really similar backgrounds that have led us to be sort of always in the helper mindset and not in the like asking for help mindset. And so we've been actively encouraging each other to like find ways to ask for help. So all these house projects, and I was venting about them to her, and she's like, you know what? I need some help. I need someone to come and just like be in my space to help me focus. I inherited all this stuff. She just lost a grandparent, inherited all this stuff, and my house is too cluttered, and I need help going through it. But I can't just get rid of anything myself. Like, you just come and sit and be like, yes, no, to each item and help me sort, right? So I was like, yes, of course I'll do that. And then I agreed. So like, I'm in helper mode again. I was like, okay, I need help too. Like, why don't we do like chore hangouts? And she ended up coming over, and we worked for like 3 hours, massive progress on my garage space. So like that happened. And then also I was at jiu-jitsu on Thursday last week, and one of the sort of
you're throwing fools at jiu-jitsu? Sorry.
I am. Yes. No, I was, yes, absolutely right. Throwing people around. So one of the like career options I'm considering is resurrecting an old side gig I had that essentially is like ghostwriting and some editing stuff. So like, I'm really good at helping people turn their kind of crappy web copy into like actually readable, quick, concise stuff. So my sensei is dyslexic and really struggles with keeping to his self-set schedule of blog posts and newsletters. And I was like, hey, sensei, what if we did like a skill swap? I want to also learn karate, which he also teaches. So like, what if I took karate and then paid for it by helping you with your text? And he immediately was like, yes, let's figure out details. So like, I was thinking about that a lot in writing. And then so Simi, while you were talking, I was thinking about how sometimes our networks happen because we are willing to be someone's helper. And then like that offering of help, right, ends up being a mutual growth instead of, I mean, you could view either of those things I just described as transactional, but I don't really think they are. It's just that we're like working together toward, 2 sets of individual goals rather than, each working in isolation and not doing as well with that. And then I went off when I was writing. So like I wrote about all of that, and I wrote about like that has been sort of the theme of my summer is, okay, so Sean, you might actually like this book. My high school buddy who coaches music PhDs out like in how to get out of academia recommended this blog to me, The Professor is In, which I've seen before. And Karen Kelsky, who writes that, has a book that
What it's
is
called,
like
The Professor is In.
The Professor is In, and the book is also titled that. And the first like 5/6 of it is like how to find a tenure track job. But the last chunk of it, which is what he said I should read, I can send you a PDF if you want, by the way.
Yeah.
Like I have it as a PDF. So the last chunk of it is leaving the academic cult, and she gets into, so like we were all talking about this a little bit earlier, like the perfectionism, the sort of binary between either total success or total failure. She talks a lot about how academia, like formal education, and then especially people who go through graduate school and are sort of pushed into academic jobs, are taught to work in isolation and to be competitive with each other,
Yes.
especially as those academic jobs have disappeared. And so she was giving actual statistics that were like, 7,000 people applying for one assistant professorship, right, in a field. So the theme of my summer, I realized I actually read that this morning, that Karen Kelsky bit. I was realizing while I was writing that the theme of my summer has been getting out of that mindset. So stop, like, I mean, I'm 36, and I feel like since I was about 6 years old, so for 30 years, I've been taught to work in isolation, to overextend myself, to, sort of constantly struggle to prove my worth in a very competitive space. And I've shifted to thinking about how my skills could help people, and how that's going to require a different kind of interaction with people than I've done, because I'm used to walking into the room and asserting my authority, which I have to do an inordinate amount because I have a baby face and they all
I can help you. I can help you all.
Yes. And having to like be the expert, and like I am an expert in some things, and I have a ton of skills that I have learned from this struggle, especially being an adjunct and not having any job security, and sometimes not knowing what I'm teaching until 2 weeks before I'm teaching it. Way too much of my career has been this like very rapid problem solving. And sorry, I realize I'm starting to do the steamroll thing I always do. I'm trying to think more about how to proactively offer those skills to people who need them and want them, and not just the people that I'm sort of tossed together with by this formal system. And then my writing in that 10 minutes even got into like my dating history and like all the kinds of relationships I've had and how they've all sort of operated in this weird dynamic. Of course, some of that is that one of my current writing projects is a memoir. So I've been doing a lot of like mining the memories lately.
There's so much in that I really appreciate, Sharon. The one that's most just at the very top of my mind is the connecting to dating history and the kind of romantic element. It's not really a romantic element. My language is failing me a little bit, but because I'm thinking, I listened to an Angela Duckworth interview on the Knowledge Project podcast. You guys know this one? He also does fs.blog. It's Farnham Street, Shane Parrish. Anyway, they asked Angela, he asked, what do you think about the following? Should people follow their passion? And, I don't know if you've seen, what's his name? The guy that wrote Deep Work, Cal Newport, basically says that that's terrible advice. You shouldn't follow your passion, because especially we don't know what our passions are. We have to actually, and so Angela Duckworth said, I think the problem is the verb follow, that there's like this clear passion that we follow, and it's more that we should develop our passion, she says. And it's like, she says, it's like dating. You don't just like, when you go out with someone, do you like them enough to go out on a second date? Some people like meet someone and they're like, oh my God, let's get married 7 days later. But that's not it. That's rare. It's more like, let's try this out and see if we're still as passionate about spending time together. And we're actually open that those passions might actually shift. It might be this thing at this season, and then it shifts to this thing, and then it shifts to this thing. So I think that's really interesting. Go ahead.
If you have a healthy approach,
Right,
then that's what you do. So actually, one of the things I
That's-
was writing about in my thinking about my dating history is I have this. Okay, so I've told you that my parents suck and I've like divorced them. My mother is a narcissist, like clinically, she's a narcissist. I'm not just saying that. I grew up in an environment where every relationship was transactional. Like there was no other option, right? And so I have this history, this unhealthy history of dating people who think that way.
Yes.
And then getting into this like people pleasing, so the parallel for me, and I think why academia sucked me in so hard, is because it was really familiar. Like the constant struggle to prove my self-worth and the constant struggle to say I am bringing enough to this transaction. So
I'm like, wow,
one of the shifts.
The academy itself is like the biggest narcissist ever in history.
Oh,
like,
definitely.
It's just like, we know what's best and it's all about us. We produce all the knowledge. So if you're not a part of us, then.
Yeah. And I think the most narcissistic tendency is its complete separation from reality. Like the number of professors who said to me, oh yeah, you're going to get a tenure track job, no problem. And then I took the time to look and see what was available when I graduated with my master's. And I was like, I'm not getting a PhD. Like, I don't want to put that extra money in to be out. Like, no, there's no jobs. And I would say that to them and they'd be like, no, you'll be fine. I'm like, but that's not reality. Like the jobs don't exist.
So I do, there's two other things I want to say since we're close to the end here, and then I want to give Simi and Daniel a chance to give some final notes and what we might try to do for Say Out Loud, what our goals for the next week are. Our networks happen when we're willing to help someone, you said, like this willingness to help other people. I saw Simi applaud, and that was huge for me. Connects to one of my friends in the music industry that has said he's professional musician, which is hard to do in Colorado. And he said, all the gigs I have now are the direct result of me willing to do things for people like 4 or 5 years ago that I scarcely remember. So he's just built this, like, I do this for you because I like care about you, not because I want to get something out of it, because I want to help you. And it's like helping me, like it's helping me also to help you, just because I'm like, I kind of suck at mastering and I'm going to get better at it with your music. Thanks. Over and over again, it's like opportunities to learn is helping other people. So I just really want to make this, the other thing, the connection point I wanted to make is that there's a big patience there. I'm like willing to help Daniel do his thing because I want to see Daniel succeed, not because of what I get out of it, but in me helping Daniel, like I'm going to be growing thinking about that, like how I do that. So that connects to the other thing you said, is just different ways of being than like walking in and being the authority, or like, I know most of the answers, so I can help you getting them, versus like, I don't know. You tell me what's going on. Yeah, oh yeah. I don't know how to change a tire, but that guy over there does. Or I don't know how to throw someone over my shoulder, but I know someone that can show you how to do it. So it's really interesting to me.
My favorite jiu-jitsu trick to show people these days is how to get out of a Donald Trump handshake. If you want to know, I will show you.
Maybe later. I hope to not get into too many of those handshakes. Which is interesting in the collaboration thing. It's kind of like, be careful who you collaborate with too. So this idea of, who said curating? I think that was Simi. Yes.
Yeah, I did use that one.
I need to curate a network around myself. I think that's really what we're doing. If we're like in the lifelong education journey, and kind of what I was hoping for out of the Wisdom Workshop is to kind of like find my people that are into that I can continue to like help and be helped by. That's why I wanted to do lifetime office hours, even though a lot of people are like, don't do that. That's like too big of an offer. And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think, one, people don't take advantage of it. And two, that's kind of really what I want this to be. Like, I want to be able to help people and give perspective. That's the funnest. Those are the funnest student advising hours. When a student comes in is like, I don't know what to do with my life. Do you want to talk about it? And I'm like, yes. Maybe you don't like that part, but I do.
It was Sean that froze that time, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
okay.
definitely
So funny.
was.
Okay, well, maybe that's a sign. I'm curious about other people's takeaways. Oh my God, my computer's about to die too. This is amazing. Daniel, Simi, any other? I know, Daniel, you said you've got a few days to process this.
Yeah, I want to go deeper into that like on my own, but it was great that this surfaced today. So yeah, very happy. And yeah, as you were talking, Sharon, I remember when you were describing the friendships, who's the guy who talks about virtuous friendships?
Aristotle.
That's Aristotle, right? Yeah. And I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of work on ourselves on how we can be virtuous friends, and that how many doors that opens. Because I don't know, like I try to think if I have transactional friendships, and I would like to think that I don't. Like maybe there are some that I might not even be considering friendships. I'm just thinking of acquaintances. But yeah, like that concept of the virtuous friendships, like I always, if I meet someone new, I'm like, my default is, how can we make this a virtuous friendship? And I think there's a lot of okay, how can we help each other here? And this also leads to, do you know Tim Urban, the guy who writes the Wait But Why blog?
He's a big entrepreneur too, isn't he?
I don't know how much he's into entrepreneurship.
Okay, it's Wait But Why?
Wait But Why. But he has a really big series called The Story of Us. And there he explains like his idea of what's the opposite of an echo chamber. And he calls them idea labs. So it's about this, about conversation and about how hearing different perspectives. And yeah, so that's another thing that I'm now remembering, they came a lot with collaboration, and how can we look for those virtuous friendships and those idea labs where you feel safe questioning your own thoughts and others people's thoughts, but with this idea of growing together. So yeah, those would be my closing thoughts.
Amazing. Idea labs to get out of the echo chamber, where we're safe to explore our own ideas as well. And the building more virtuous friendships, I pulled up an Epicureanism as well. It's not just Aristotle talks about virtuous friendships for profit, so like networking friendships, and then pleasurable friendships for pleasure. And the pleasurable friendships go away when the source of pleasure goes away. So if I have a bowling buddy and the bowling lanes close, I don't see that buddy anymore. A profiteering friendship are the ones that go away when we're no longer profiting from the friendship. But the virtuous ones, where I'm invested in your well-being and you're invested in mine, and we both have the sense that we're getting more out of the relationship than the other person is, because we're like, there's like a mutual giving, is what is really interesting. And Epicurus talks about this idea of, he called it's like a sacred friendship. Like friendships are the thing that really keep us rooted, grounded. It's like a really big deal. So I really, really like the fact that friendship has come up so much in this conversation, or these different types of collaborations. Thanks to Simi, I think kind of started us thinking in that way. Maybe not, but whatever.
I'll take it.
Yeah, good job. Simi, final thoughts?
Well, I'd like to be able to say someday, hey, sensei. I think that would be awesome. I also had a thought as Sharon was speaking about, just reflecting back to the question you asked. And I think my challenge is asking for help. I don't think I know that that's my challenge, right? And so this project is good. So I can pay for help. I can sign up for help, but asking and saying I need help is something that doesn't come easy. And I am more likely, I'm not just more likely, but I find myself offering help more than I ask for help, to the point that I exhaust myself offering help, right? So that's really just got me thinking about this week's challenge will be a challenge, and how I can ask for help in the true sense of asking and reaching out. So looking forward to this week's assignment.
Me too. That's inspired. I'm gonna do a couple Clubhouse rooms on speed help networking. Just I need help with. I might be able to help with blank and blank. Fill in the gap. Get to know people. That. Just to. I do
Invite
think.
Me. I'd like to join that.
All right. Yeah, and I also think. I mean, I want to continue on our exploration here, and we will on the other. There's one hanging question here. One of my goals that I need help with is to build a more robust alumni community and offer more programming specifically for alumni, so there's more opportunities to do more meet and greet and to catch up over time, so that because there's some really cool community. Each little class has its own, this is a neat community this we have going right now, and it's different than the other ones, and I'm really interested in seeing those different communities kind of interact over time. So there will be other opportunities to continue to not just network, but kind of cultivate deeper friendships that I hope continue, years on. That's kind of the inspirational vision that I have for alternative school, where you're done when you're done with it. It's no, this kind of is going to keep on going, and different things are going to come up. So I'll be working on that. And I might practice my help asking with our email thread to see if y'all want to help. I just need to formalize that. Okay, thank you all. It was a great one. I got a lot out of that tonight, so thank you.
Everyone. Yes.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
All right, go charge your laptop.
Yeah, right.
Have fun.
Yeah. I'll send an email here in a little bit too.